Mirko Cro Cop has had one of the most legendary runs in MMA. The man who became the face of Pride FC was famous for his striking, most notably his powerful kicks. But as much success as he found in Pride, he was unable to find that in the UFC. So how good was Mirko Cro Cop actually? Hey guys, it's Kiiyon, and today I want to talk about Mirko Filipovic, who is most famously known as Mirko Cro Cop. The former Pride Openweight Grand Prix champion was one of the most deadliest strikers in MMA history. But he was never able to capture the Pride Heavyweight Championship or even the UFC one. So in this video, we're going to take a look at Mirko Cro Cop's career to fully understand why he's such a huge figure in the sport. Mirko Cro Cop, who was a K1 kickboxer, began his MMA career in 2001 as he wanted more challenge and more pay. He would have his first MMA fight in K1, and that would be against Kazuyuki Fujita. The fight ended in 39 seconds after Mirko would land a knee on Fujita, who was going down for a takedown. And although Kazuyuki completed the takedown, the ref stopped the fight after Fujita's face was all kinds of busted up. He would then make his Pride FC debut against Nobukiko Takada. The fight was very lackluster, with Takada moving away from Cro Cop most of the fight and attempting takedowns that would be denied for the most part by Mirko. But in his next fight against Fuji Nagata, Cro Cop introduced the world to his dangerous kicks by finishing the fight in 21 seconds with a high left kick. In his fourth fight, he fought Pride FC middleweight champion Wanderlei Silva. Early in the fight, Wanderlei was able to take down Cro Cop and also land strikes on the feet. But once Cro Cop was able to neutralize the takedown, he would begin showing his kickboxing skills by landing some powerful kicks on Silva. And after 5 3-minute rounds, the fight was declared a draw. Mirko's next fight was against Kazuyoshi Sakuraba, who was a legend in Japan at that point. Sakuraba was able to find success in this fight by taking down Cro Cop multiple times. But when on the feet, the fight was in Mirko's favor as he connected with multiple shots. And on the ground, he would land an up kick off his back that would break Sakuraba's orbital bone. When the round ended, the fight was stopped by the doctors and Cro Cop was awarded the victory. Mirko would go on to fight Kazuyuki Fujita in a rematch. Cro Cop would land some powerful kicks when the fight was on the feet. And even when Fujita took the fight to the ground, it seemed like Mirko was attacking more from the bottom. This would lead to a unanimous decision win for Cro Cop. In 2003, Mirko fought Heath Herring. Both men connected with shots, and Herring would try to take down Cro Cop, but with no success. Then Mirko would land a nasty liver kick that hurt Herring badly. Cro Cop would go on to finish the fight on the ground with strikes. Mirko went on to fight Igor Vovchin, who was also a very skilled striker. And the fight went down as expected, with both men swinging early in addition to throwing kicks. Igor was the aggressor early, but Cro Cop was able to dodge most of his attacks. Then 90 seconds into the fight, Cro Cop would land a left high kick that would give Igor his first knockout loss. This win would not only earn Cro Cop Knockout of the Year honors, but it really seemed like it was Cro Cop's time to shine. And after continuing that momentum by knocking out Dos Caras Jr. with another high left kick, people really wanted a matchup between Mirko Cro Cop and Pride Heavyweight Champion Fedor Emelianenko. But instead, Mirko would go on to fight for the interim Heavyweight Championship against Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira after Fedor had a contract dispute with Pride. In the fight, Cro Cop was finding success on the feet and would take down Nogueira, where he would land ground and pound. In the end of that round, he would land a left high kick that would drop Nogueira, but the bell would stop Mirko from finishing the fight. In the second, Nogueira would secure a takedown early and work his way to the mount. After throwing strikes from above, Nogueira would secure an armbar after Cro Cop tried to reverse the position. It was Mirko's first loss in MMA, but he would come back in 2004 where he would fight 8 times. Mirko's first fight after the loss was against Ron Waterman, who took Cro Cop down early and would land shots from above. But Cro Cop would manage to get back up, and once he did, he would connect with a left high kick and punches that dropped Waterman. Cro Cop would finish the fight with soccer kicks. After this win, Mirko fought Yoshihisa Yamamoto. He would destroy Yamamoto by landing kicks, ground and pound, soccer kicks, and strikes. This honestly was one of the worst beatdowns I've seen in MMA. Following this win, Cro Cop fought Kevin Randleman in the first round of the Heavyweight Grand Prix. Cro Cop was not only the favorite to win the fight, but also win the entire tournament. Yet Kevin Randleman was smart with his game plan, which involved closing the distance with the clinch and attempting to bring the fight to the ground. And with 2 minutes into the fight, Kevin would knock down Mirko and finish him on the ground with strikes. This was a huge upset in the MMA world, but Cro Cop would bounce back into one of the greatest streaks of his career. After beating Hiromitsu Kanara by decision, in where Cro Cop would throw kick after kick and knees on the ground, Mirko would finish Shango Ayoma in the first round after landing uppercuts that stopped the fight. After this, he fought Alexander Emelianenko, the brother of Fedor. Alexander was 3-0 and had a lot of hype behind him. And he started off aggressive early against Cro Cop by connecting with his shots. But Cro Cop would end the fight in the first with a left high kick. After this win, Mirko fought former UFC heavyweight champion Josh Barnett, who had a record of 18-1 at the time. Barnett started off the fight as the aggressor by landing strikes and taking down Mirko where he landed more ground and pound. But 46 seconds into the fight, Barnett would tap after injuring his shoulder. Mirko was the victor and closed 2004 off by fighting Kevin Randleman, who knocked him out 8 months prior. And in this fight, Randleman came out with the same game plan as he had in the first: clinch Cro Cop and go for the takedown. The problem was that when Kevin went for the takedown, Mirko would lock up the guillotine choke. 41 seconds into the fight, Randleman would tap and Mirko would avenge the loss and would win a fight for the first time by submission. In the post-fight interview, he would call out Mark Coleman and the two would fight at Prix 29. Cro Cop would stuff Mark's takedown attempts and would pick him apart on the feet with strikes. The fight would end 3 minutes and 40 seconds into the first. Mirko's next fight was against Ibrahim Magomedov, a teammate of Fedor Emelianenko. The two would exchange on the feet for a majority of the fight. Magomedov was the aggressor, while Cro Cop would dodge his attacks and slip in a few of his own. Cro Cop was always very calculated with his striking. He would pick his shots accurately and wouldn't overcommit on attacks. And by doing this, Magomedov started getting slower as the fight went on. Cro Cop would then land a liver kick that dropped Magomedov and the fight was stopped. It was an impressive performance by Mirko, but what was even better was when Fedor and Cro Cop met in the middle of the ring. The fight was finally gonna go down. The two fought in August of 2005. The first round was wild. Both men connected with powerful shots and had each other rocked. Cro Cop would break Fedor's nose and Fedor took Cro Cop down to the ground. The fight would be on the ground for a while, with Fedor landing some heavy ground and pound. And this definitely tired Cro Cop by the time the first round ended. In the second, Cro Cop was able to land kicks to the head and body of Fedor. But Fedor's pressure was too much as he constantly moved forward and would eventually take the fight to the ground again and tire Cro Cop out even more. The same would happen in the third and Fedor would eventually be awarded the unanimous decision by the judges. Mirko came back 2 months later to rematch Josh Barnett. The fight was closely contested, with Barnett pressing forward and keeping the fight close in the clinch. But Mirko would also find success when he took the fight to the floor and when the two men were standing. In the end, Mirko won the decision. After edging out this win, Cro Cop fought Mark Hunt. Cro Cop landed some nice kicks, knees, and punches in the fight, yet Mark Hunt was able to take all of them without going down. In return, Mark would also attack and connect with his strikes. The fight ended up becoming a kickboxing match that Cro Cop would eventually lose by split decision. In 2006, Mirko entered the Pride Openweight tournament. In the opening round, he would defeat Ikuhisa Minowa in the first by throwing some nice uppercuts in the clinch before finishing the fight on the floor by strikes. In the second round, Mirko defeated Hidehiko Yoshida by throwing many leg kicks that Yoshida was unable to get back up. On his 32nd birthday, Cro Cop fought Vanderlei Silva for a second time in the semifinals of the tournament. In this fight, he would dominate Silva on the feet and on the ground. The fight would end with a high left kick that knocked Vanderlei out. In the finals, which was on the same night, Mirko fought Josh Barnett for a third time. Both men truly went all out as Barnett maintained pressure and Cro Cop maintained distance with counter-strikes. The fight would go to the ground where Mirko landed a body shot that dropped Barnett. He would go on to throw strikes from the top before Barnett tapped. Mirko Cro Cop became the Pride Openweight Grand Prix champion and had one of the most beautiful emotional breakdowns the sport has ever seen. Many believed that Mirko would fight Fedor Emelianenko for a second time after winning this tournament. And the fight was set for New Year's Eve in 2006, but the fight failed to go down after Cro Cop pulled out due to a foot injury. This fight with Barnett would also be Cro Cop's last fight with Pride FC after Mirko signed with the UFC and made his highly anticipated debut in 2007 against Eddie Sanchez. This marked the first time that Cro Cop would fight outside of Japan as the event took place in Las Vegas. He would have a spectacular performance by dodging all of Eddie's strikes and would counter with power punches and kicks. The fight would eventually end by strikes on the ground in under a round. Mirko went on to fight Gabriel Gonzaga in a title eliminator bout. Gonzaga would push the pace early and would be able to secure a takedown in the first round. But when the fight got back up to the feet, Gonzaga would throw a right head kick that would knock Mirko out cold. The loss was a huge upset, but credit to Cro Cop who took the loss on the chin and came back 5 months later to fight Czech Congo. After winning the first round with kicks, punches, and taking the fight to the ground, Congo would take over in the second and third, which would ultimately give him the unanimous decision. Mirko did credit the loss to cracking his ribs during the fight and losing energy from illegal groin strikes by Congo. Following these back-to-back losses, Cro Cop would go back to Japan in 2008 and fight there 3 times with the newly formed Japanese fighting promotion, Dream. He said he preferred fighting in rings instead of cages and also missed fighting in Japan. Cro Cop fought Tatsuya Mizuno and would defeat him 56 seconds into the first round by strikes. After this quick victory, Mirko fought Alistair Overeem. Overeem would find success early by controlling Cro Cop on the ground and by landing strikes. But when it was on the feet, Overeem would land multiple knees to the groin of Mirko, and this forced the ref to stop the fight, even though Cro Cop said he was fine. Apparently, because of this, one of Mirko's testicles lodged into his body. The fight would be ruled a no contest. And 2 months later, Cro Cop would come back on New Year's Eve to fight supergiant Hong Man Choi. What's wild about this fight was Cro Cop was still able to land head kicks. He would also throw kicks to the body and legs of Choi. And after landing a really hard nut shot, Cro Cop would finish the fight with a leg kick. After this stint in Japan, Mirko would come back to the UFC where he defeated Mustafa Al-Turk by strikes in the first round. He went on to fight Junior Dos Santos, who continuously pressured with his striking. The fight would end after Cro Cop sustained an eye injury from a knee by Dos Santos. After this loss, Cro Cop would express not taking risks in the fight, playing it safe, and just not having the hunger anymore. Well, following this loss, he bounced back with 2 straight wins by defeating Anthony Perosh in a fight that was stopped in the second by the doctors, and Pat Barry, who he submitted via rear naked choke in the third round after being dropped multiple times by Pat. But then Cro Cop would go on to the worst streak of his career when he lost 3 fights in a row, with the first being a knee by Frank Mir. The second loss was to the hands of Brendan Schaub, and the third was to Roy Nelson. All these losses occurred in the third round, and Cro Cop would reveal after these fights the injuries he sustained prior to them. After this fight, Cro Cop left the UFC and went back to Japan, where he defeated Shinichi Suzukawa by armbar in the first. Cro Cop would then lose his next fight against Alexei Oleinik, who defeated him in the first round with the scarf hold headlock, making it Cro Cop's first submission loss in 10 years. Cro Cop went on to fight for the IGF Championship in Japan against Satoshi Ishii, who was an Olympic gold medalist in judo. Ishii would take the fight to the ground where he would control Cro Cop for a majority of the fight, but on the feet, Mirko connected with strikes that would open a cut on the head of Ishii. This would force the doctors to stop the fight. Mirko became the IGF champion, but would agree to a rematch with Satoshi later that year and a title defense. Cro Cop would finish the fight with his famous left high kick and strikes. He would then vacate the IGF belt and sign with the UFC to fight Gabriel Gonzaga for a second time. After Gonzaga won the first 2 rounds by taking down Cro Cop and controlling him on the ground, Mirko would land elbows in the clinch that would drop Gonzaga, giving Cro Cop top control where he would continue throwing elbows before the refs stopped the fight. It was such a great thing to see Cro Cop do in 2015. But this would be his final fight with the UFC, as he would admit to USADA for the use of HGH to help his injured shoulder. He would be suspended for 2 years by USADA and the UFC would release him. He would then sign with Japanese fighting promotion Rizin, where he entered the 2016 Openweight Grand Prix. He would win his first and second round fights, with the first win being an arm triangle choke against Hyun Man Myung, which would be the last submission win of his career, and the second being against Mohamed Lawal by strikes in the second round. In the semi-finals, he finished Baruto Keito 49 seconds into their fight with a knee to the body. He would go on to fight Amir Alekbari in the finals, where he would knock down Amir early and finish him with strikes all within the first. Mirko Cro Cop became the Rizin Openweight Grand Prix champion and would come back to fight for Rizin 2 more times, where he defeated Tsuyoshi Kosaka in the first round by strikes, and Rocky Martinez by doctor stoppage after elbowing Rocky on the forehead, which opened up a cut. Cro Cop went on to sign with Bellator and made his debut in 2019 in a rematch against Roy Nelson. And after 3 rounds of Cro Cop landing elbows, kicks, and denying Nelson's takedowns for the most part, Cro Cop would win the unanimous decision. Fedor Emelianenko was also signed to Bellator, and it really seemed like the two were going to meet again. But on March 1st, 2019, Mirko Cro Cop would announce his retirement due to suffering a stroke after his fight with Roy Nelson. Cro Cop would reveal that he had neck issues that affected his balance and movement. The doctors told him it would not be safe to fight in risk of taking another hit to the head and possibly becoming paralyzed forever. Cro Cop would end his career with a record of 38 wins, 11 losses, 2 draws, and 1 no contest. In this time, he would win the Openweight Grand Prix championships in both Pride and Rizin. He would also capture the IGF title, but he was never able to capture the UFC belt. So the question I want to answer now is, how good was Mirko Cro Cop actually? In my opinion, I think he is one of the greatest heavyweights and strikers the sport has ever seen. The man became one of the faces of Pride FC after going on one of the most legendary runs. His kickboxing transitioned perfectly into MMA, as most of his opponents early on had no answer for the right kick hospital, left kick cemetery. This made him one of the greatest counter-strikers at the time, as he would stay calculated with what he was going to throw and how much power he was going to throw it with. And this all depended on how his opponents would react in the fight, and for the most part, they would start aggressive early and begin to slow down as the striking output from Cro Cop would gradually increase over time. His speed and accuracy in his prime was out of this world, and it truly made him one of the most terrifying fighters at the time. But of course, as Mirko became older, his speed would decrease. And in addition to that, more of his opponents would anticipate his kicks and would know what to do to neutralize that attack. But what made Cro Cop a great martial artist is that he adapted. Initially, he built strong takedown defense to avoid the fight going to the ground. But his game would eventually evolve into him taking the fight down more often and beating his opponents down there with strikes or even go for the submission. I will never forget in Pride when he would stuff an opponent's takedown attempt and throw knees to their head from that position. But his striking was truly at its best when he was quick with his attacks and reactions. And after being in so many wars, Cro Cop was bound to slow down. In my opinion, I think Cro Cop reached his peak after the Fedor fight, and so did Emelianenko himself. Yes, Cro Cop continued to win and even became the Pride Openweight Grand Prix champion, but he slowly began declining from his peak after the war with Fedor. And him winning the Openweight Grand Prix championship was the perfect farewell before Cro Cop truly was out of his prime and began losing in the UFC. I understand he finished his career with 10 straight wins, but it was against lower end competition or fighters past their prime, which I'm honestly not trying to take away from Cro Cop. He was just not the same fighter that he was in his golden years, and that's what fans will remember him for the most. His knockout performances that made him one of the most feared men in all of MMA. Having 34 of his 38 wins end in stoppage proves how much of a human highlight reel this man was. Mirko Cro Cop was definitely more than good. He was amazing. My name is Kiiyon, and this was my take on how good Mirko Cro Cop actually was. Do you agree, disagree, or have something else to add? Please put it in the comments down below, because I'd love to read it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. But that's all I have for now, so I'll see you on my next one.